This podcast was recorded on April 24th, 2019. In the podcast, I talked with Tommy Ryan, the president of ThreeWill, about Workplace by Facebook. Are you considering whether to move from Workplace by Facebook over to Office 365? If so, listen to this podcast and you'll find out some of our initial thoughts of making the move, both the how and the why of doing this. Hi, and welcome to the Work Together Better podcast. This is your host, Danny Ryan. This is ThreeWill's official podcast about enterprise collaboration, how people, process, and technology combine to help organizations, departments, and teams work together better. Hello and welcome to the Work Together Better podcast. This is your host, Danny Ryan. I am here with Tommy Ryan. How are you doing, Tommy?
I'm doing great, Danny.
Excellent.
Yep.
Excellent. We've got the holiday weekend coming up here. We're just about to, we're on heading into Easter weekend here, and we've spent half a day carved out looking at a new product, or looking at a new product to us, Workplace for Facebook, and just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the product and how it fits into what we do as an organization. And so I'll start us off here a little bit with some context. So we've, through the years, have been helping companies migrate into Office 365 from different platforms. Over the last couple of years, it's been picking up a lot with us helping people move from Jive, which is a social platform, over into Office 365. And what I wanted to do was to take a couple of weeks here and go through some of the other platforms that are out there and talk with you about really, at a high level what they do and where they might fit into the Office 365 world. Talk a little bit maybe about the content types that they have, talk a little bit about, and just in general, what sort of, reasoning would somebody have to migrate into Office 365, and just take a look at a couple different products out there. This first one we're going to look at is Workplace. I keep on
Workplace by Facebook.
Okay, so I keep on wanting to call it something else. I don't know what it is about that, but I was for a while I was calling it it's like Facebook Work or something, or just making up different names for it. So Workplace. So this should fit in well to our, we help companies with Office 365 digital workplaces. So that's definitely, that word means something to us and has a lot to do with what we do as an organization. So getting started here and starting to use it together, my first impression is this is it basically, if people are using Facebook right now, it's a very easy. There's no training involved. They can get up and running on this very quickly.
Yeah, definitely same UI metaphors and similar content types that you have, and you definitely are, navigating and liking and responding and creating in a very similar way. So. A lot of people use Facebook, so I think you're going to take care of a good part of your organization from a training standpoint by going to Facebook. And I would imagine over time, as things change from UI interactions in Facebook, that would be reflected in Workplace, where they find some best practices and a way to keep it fresh, which I think would be important. For them to stay viable as another platform.
And I saw it's primarily in the area of social, and so we're talking about a lot of things with like communities, groups, dealing a lot with feeds, and this is, you're mentioning social interactions. So my first, sort of like when we were doing. Working with Jive, and right away my mind sort of says, well, what's the equivalent within Office 365? The thing that jumps out to me is it feels a lot like it's Yammer.
Yeah, I would say it leans towards Yammer. Yeah. Although, definitely there's some overlap with Teams too, because when you look at the richness of your post, that reminds me more of what you can do in Teams, where Teams, you've got, GIFs and images and formatted text. That's not what you see in Yammer. Yammer's more of a plain text approach, a simpler posting. But I think the type of communication that you do within Workplace is more similar to what you would do inside of Yammer. It does have a group concept, so you can narrow down the conversation, but it's also where you could have everyone in the company go to be communicated, through kind of that active bulletin board of information that needs to be shared with the company. And it seems like more of sharing information than actually getting work done.
Yeah.
Versus Teams has a lot of that social capability, but it's tied very tightly with working with content that is being updated and versioned. And as we were poking around, at first I didn't think you had any versioning capability. It wasn't very apparent until you went in kind of to the files area of a group. And I noticed one of the options was uploading another version, but it doesn't have that rich capability of opening it up in the browser edit capability like you have with the Google platform, the Microsoft platform, where they're editable online documents. So I think that's a real shortcoming if you're trying to get work done where it involves updating documents.
Yeah, I think came to a little bit of a realization earlier today. Maybe the reason why I have a problem with it being called Workplace is, for us, the definition of a workplace is where you're getting work done together.
Yes, right.
And a core piece of that is I think the experience that you get within, collaborating together on a document. Maybe we're just old schoolers and we're document centric. But that seems to me to be a vital part of what a digital workplace is you and I are working together on docs. It's not so much, and so that might be a place where I'm like, I have a problem with it. I think this is where, as part of their platform, they have integration with OneDrive, SharePoint, Box, the other big players, because I think they probably came to the realization fairly quickly, like, is that what we're doing, guys? Are we going to be a CMS? Is this the direction that we're going into? And it looks like they're doing the good old fashioned, sort of like what Jive did.
Jive really didn't want to be a CMS.
They didn't want to be a CMS.
They
wanted to
kind
be
of straddle that a bit.
Yeah.
But if you pin them down, I think their view was, we're not a CMS. We're not like a SharePoint or Documentum, something that is more enterprise grade CMS capabilities. They did want the social side of it. And, looking through what you did in Jive, you had the collaborative documents, kind of a wiki markup. There are some things in there. I haven't dug in that deep, but it really, to me, feels like it's sharing versus collaborating and updating enterprise content. It's more of sharing ideas, getting feedback, creating the social aspect of getting decisions made by feedback and collaboration through discussions.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably where it hits home and is probably the strongest. And we start talking about, well, what if someone had to leave? They wanted to consolidate and say, I just want Office 365 and that suite, and I don't want to add complexity of having Facebook. I feel like a lot of this content, don't know if people would bring it forward or not. Yeah. Some of it would belong in Yammer, and do you have to put some of those conversations out there for a record of, what decisions were made, what information was learned through discussions? That's a tough call. And then the document content, because it's not a strong CMS, what are you going to really think you're going to have a lot of document content that needs to be moved into a CMS, or you realize, well, the content they had up there probably was a copy of something that was managed somewhere else. Or if they had the integration, then they don't have to move that content. But, you can look at Jive and you could say, well, Jive's very close to Workplace. I mean, it's very heavy, it leans heavy on the social side of things. Yeah. And so why are people moving from Jive? Well, there's decisions being made. There's information that kind of evolves that, needs to be moved over.
Yeah, I think of, if you have both of them up and running, what's the issues? And I think we run into the same, very similar types of issues that we saw with having multiple platforms that do very similar things, right. Which is the search problem.
Yeah.
It is the where do I put things problem. It is one of the things I noticed about this is they're still relying on, they have integration with Azure AD. I think a lot of people are recognizing Microsoft's owning that. So I'm like, okay, the Azure stuff is Microsoft. Or the Active Directory stuff is Microsoft. The SharePoint looks like if you might be using SharePoint, so you're storing the documents in there. But then the social thing, you're just going to use. I'm trying to figure out like where. I understand the training part. I understand that maybe a younger generation than me would appreciate using Facebook as at work. But then I'm also going like, is there really that much of a benefit where you would have both of them in play?
Yeah, I think a part of this is the level of engagement.
Yeah.
And are you supporting the culture of, knowledge sharing and, collaborating, making decisions together as a team and using digital tools to get you there?
Yeah.
When you think about the training of going to Facebook versus going to Office 365, I think there is a competitive advantage there that, okay, it's natural. I know how to do it. And, you can't discount that. And so I think that might be the attractor to, start using it. And then you get all these, all this information that's in there. And I think your challenge will be it's not a full solution.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be stuck where I either have to integrate, and anytime you integrate, it's never seamless. It's always going to be clunky to some extent. So is it worth that, low adoption or low training curve to adopt the product? Or do you put the extra investment in training and evangelizing? How are we doing this within Office 365? Where do we do certain types of collaboration? And I know a big topic for us these days is controlling the provisioning process, because it's not, what template do I use in SharePoint and where do I put it? It's, I need to do this type of collaboration. Where should it go?
Yeah. Should
it be in a Microsoft team? Should it be in a communication site? Should that be something that you store in your OneDrive? And so when people try to make decisions on where do I put information, I've got a new team that needs to get work done. Provisioning that and guiding people to where it should go is going to be critical when you have such a diverse, wide platform like Office 365. Now, if you have a very small organization and you're looking at Facebook, then you don't need to have the training department, all this effort into rallying the team to say, this is how we can do it. You're going to have lower friction. And, but I think it creates challenges in the long term when you need to have a fuller set of tools, and that's where it's going to fall flat. That's where I think organizations might get frustrated.
Yeah. Well, they put out on in the YouTube channel and their site, sort of, they've got 30,000 customers. I imagine a lot of them are smaller customer. There is the benefit of that not having to train, and then there's the certain amount of. I think for a culture, like if you say you're a collaborative culture, like in this little bit, it's Facebook. It's I think we're probably saying, "Hey, it's cool as Facebook," but the younger generation is saying, "Oh, that's so cool."
I think that's one of the things.
I think that's
that
weird,
is
but that's happened.
A challenge for Facebook.
Yes,
it is becoming an older generation for their demographic.
But why not? So back to something we were talking about earlier today, which was if an organization has both in play, why not just turn on? Like where could we fill in? Is anybody going to need our help to get people off of Facebook?
Part of it might be
if they decide that they don't want to go this way,
people
or
having an archive strategy,
just to archive,
to be able to say, I've got things that I know I've decided on something. I know we had this discussion before, and it's going to be that decision of, do I have enough kind of active content that it's going to be too painful to search an archive and then find it and then somehow start a new conversation, or we've got too much working knowledge in here. Our team depends on it. We're going to have a productivity drag if all this stuff goes away or is in an archive format. We need to bring it forward as working content. And we've done that in the Jive world, where sometimes it's been, all we can do is archive it. We don't want to invest the time and money to get it to translate into a high fidelity, moving forward piece of content. And you're going to have organizations. We know some large organizations that are on this platform where they're going to say, we've got enough valuable content in there that we're going to have to migrate it.
And I guess we've seen part of the reason why we're covering workplace is through the years of talking with different folks. There's, you ran into one, I ran into one, where the replacement for Jive was this. Right.
Yeah, I think you ran into one like that. The one I ran into, it was going from Jive into SharePoint, and they already had Facebook Workplace as their intranet. So their decision was kind of going from 3 to 2, and the content was going from Jive to SharePoint. And the content they never, I guess, got more of their intranet content into Jive.
I think
community.
I think it was the same way with mine. I just part of the Jive, a lot of the Jive stuff seemed like it was going towards moving it into Workplace. So I think that was one of the reasons why we're looking at this as one that was out there. And anything. Part of it is we've seen. We're working with different customers. Sometimes there's approaches of just shut it off.
Yeah, you gotta
time period.
Have a good enough reason pulse on the organization to understand the impact of, if I shut this down, and we this content went away, how would that impact our organization? And I think most organizations don't feel comfortable enough to just shut it down. We've seen some that have, but they've archived the content. So I think, if we look at these different content sources and we say, okay, what's the probability of a customer that's on Workplace that needs to bring the, back into the organization and want to get rid of that part of their technical stack? I think the majority of them are going to think about an archive strategy. Yeah. That's my gut. Now, a lot of times you think one thing and you're surprised that, people want to go further than that. And we get in a lot of conversations with Jive to SharePoint where we think they just want to archive, and, as they think more about that content and the liability of that content not being available or not being working content that could move forward, they opt to migrate it.
I wonder how many of these opportunities come up, because I know we've done a fair amount of work in regulated industries, how some of this could come up from a risk standpoint too.
With a lot of Facebook is not, getting the best press about privacy.
You're just saying they're either a publicly traded company or they're in a regulated industry, and something gets out through this, and then all of a sudden it doesn't matter. It needs to happen, and it's more of a risk compliance reason than it is anything else. We've seen that as well come up.
Yeah, and coming from Mark Zuckerberg, where go fast, break things.
Yeah,
that is not always compatible with enterprise. Where if you break something that makes my information vulnerable to my competitors. That's a different story than, did someone see my picture of my baby, accidentally because they broke something in their security by running fast.
Yep. So this is the first of a number of conversations. This is a conversation starter. If you're listening to this and you're at this stage of the podcast, thank you for hanging in there. If you're interested in other types of platforms for us to cover, definitely leave a comment. Leave anything. We're interested if you go through our website. We're trying to understand the different platforms that are out there and where Threewill can fill a role, perhaps with somebody either consolidating or, I just mentioned the compliance risk. If there's some reason where you feel like you're stuck on some platform and need some help from an outside partner, we've just been really focusing in on that. We've got great expertise around Office 365, how to get things into it from not only from a migration standpoint, but just coming up with a good plan around doing this and how to roll it out to different groups and help you out as an organization to pull this off successfully. I joke around when I'm usually talking to people about migrations where you can execute a migration perfectly, but if the communication falls apart, it can make the whole project look like a failure. And so working with an outside group like Threewill, we can really help you around effectively managing risk as you're moving from one platform to the other and making sure you're communicating properly. Anything else before we wrap up here, Tom?
I think we need to let the audience know we're extremely passionate about the digital workplace and people getting the most out of that digital workplace, and the moving your content from another platform into Office 365 is that first step in the journey. We know that the digital workplace has value based on the content it has, and so that's a big part of how we add value in the digital workplace. And that's all I have to add on that.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.